It's Wellness Wednesday. It's Wellness Wednesday. And ta-da, new bookshelf. Da-da. I'm still recentering the camera. I don't know why it's so off now, but anyway, that's to the point. I pulled the video that was going to be here today. There was no video yesterday because putting together that bookshelf and moving everything around, not only did I drop a piece of furniture on my left foot after wrecking my right foot last 2 weekends ago. But yeah, Monday was a bad pain day. And, yeah, it's kind of weird that people would come to a channel with a person with multiple disabilities and just go completely bananagrams on Monday's video about an offhanded joke about DEI. It was a joke. It was not the main meat of the video. The Duluth model, people flipped out on the Duluth model comments because I wasn't negative enough. And I said, I don't support it. I don't. But no, it is this. And this is all emotional responses masquerading as reason, which is why we're talking a bit about it on Wellness Wednesday. What's this really about? Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Your Patreon support really helps the shit I eat go down smoother. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. I currently cannot take on any new people who can't afford it until, more money starts coming in. I've had to sort of put one person on pause right now because there just isn't. I give a lot of, discounted and free sessions. And I have to, really watch my bottom line so I can, buy things like shelves deeply discounted. Yeah. And, one of the things that I work with is people with disabilities. And disability is supposed to be one of these diversity, equity, and inclusion metrics. But, people don't tend to declare their disabilities in the job interview because they're afraid if they do, they won't get hired. And this is a problem with the whole idea of DEI. Some people have been taught to be terrified of it or hate it. Ask yourself why. Other people just go, yeah, it's bullshit. It's ass covering by the company. And these are two completely different perspectives. Both cannot be right. A company can't both be just giving lip service so people will get off their backs and they can, attract angel investor money, and it being some vast conspiracy against, white men. And that's the thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just replacing one kind of discrimination for another kind of discrimination. When it fails, it can look like that. But a lot of, like I said, the DEI programs out there were just ass covering exercises for the companies. They do believe in, it would be nice to attract diverse talent as long as they have to put no real effort into it. And I know this because I've worked DEI gigs. It's a lot of DEI is just a cash grab racket. In my experience, it's being replaced by something called emotionally safe workplaces or psychologically safe workplaces. The problem is, before DEI, there was affirmative action. And that got demonized. And that's why it stopped being affirmative action, because you're the affirmative action hire. And then there's the DEI hire. And, I joked when I helped judge a hip hop competition a few weekends ago. I joked that I was the DEI hire as the lone white person on the panel. And everybody laughed. Like, it was just sort of, all right, that's funny. Yeah, she knows her place. And there, there were sort of awkward moments, but that's why I think it's important to talk about this stuff, because, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just about a head count, right? It's about people, all people, feeling like they can not only do their jobs, but voice opinions without, the sky falling instantly. And is it poorly done? Yeah, in a lot of places it is. A lot of it's a joke that, like I said, I will keep saying it, is ass-covering measures by the company. But does that mean the idea doesn't have merit? It absolutely has merit. And, one of the big criticisms of how DEI functions by people who are supporters of the concept but don't like how it's executed is the fact that, disabled people just get screwed. Because reasonable accommodation is this iffy who determines what is reasonable. And that's why the emotionally safe or psychologically safe workplace is an interesting transition that is just going to get branded with the same brush, because it still means that nobody can just say whatever they want. And the people who have the biggest issue with that are the people who are under the false impression that, cruelty and demeaning people is professional somehow. And I mean, the tech industry is quite bad for that still. But I mean, Zitter is running on that X Twitter is running on, foreign visa employees. So you can't hire anybody locally? Really? The people educated in American schools aren't the best. You need a bunch of brown guys who are basically modern indentured servants. Really, that's your best people? Okay. All right. And my attitude, it's his company. He can run it the way he wants to. Now, there are laws. And, I live in Canada where we do have more labor protections than the US because we don't have this idea of a right to work state. But generally, the Canadian attitude is, especially now, much more we're all in this together, and much less I've got mine, you get yours. Now, there is a nasty anti-immigrant sentiment going on right now, which is unfortunate because, the minute times get tough, people forget why we, took in the immigrants we did at the time. It's that our birth rate is not replacing the population, and we need people to pay pensions for, the boomers who are, messing up the economy in many, many ways. And the people most likely to be opposed to DEI initiatives are Gen X, like the first half of Gen X, so 55 to 64-year-old men. And I mean, there's no mystery as to why that is, because those are the guys that I read an article in China, and apparently your 30s is too old to get a good job there. But yeah, the 50s it's tough for guys. You tend to be earning more money, and so they fire you and hire people who will work for less or on contract to do your job. And it's really hard to find something to replace that income. So I get why, DEI is an easy thing to blame, but that was happening before DEI. That's just shitty corporate practices who don't appreciate that people who have been at the company, sure, maybe you don't have the same hustle that you once did. You can't pull all-nighters all the time, but you have an awareness of how things work. And that is not valued, hence a move to emotionally safe workplaces. And it's the same core principles that everyone should come to work feeling included, and that the company operates fairly, and that there is an exchange of different perspective, experience, and viewpoints, right? That's inclusion, equity, and diversity. Those are all concepts that are good, but that's not what it is. And this is where the emotional response kicks in. Okay? It's not rational. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I'm telling you, as somebody who made that video on Monday and read the studies and made sure that these studies were replicated and and confirmed, because anything in psychology and sociology has a confirmation bias, but this is sort of, people keep checking this and checking this and checking this. And people just, no, you're wrong. No, that's not it. Says who? What are your qualifications? Where's your counter evidence? I showed you mine. Where's yours? You're not being logical. Oh, yes, right? No, man. You're feeling excluded. You feel like it isn't fair, and you feel unheard. What you are looking for is the right to have an opinion that is different, feeling like it's fair, and like you matter. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's literally what the words mean. No, it doesn't. And this is where things get absolutely ridiculous, because all you have to do is convince someone that a word is bad, and they will freak out, which, hate to break it to you, that's what y'all were calling the left snowflakes over 10 years ago. If you want the right to call me a bitch slag and I should just grow a thicker skin, you should be able to handle the words DEI. And no, that's not permission to call me those things. You should not need these rules to be a decent human being. By the way, if you don't believe in DEI, all of y'all who are using autism as an excuse for rudeness or ADHD as an excuse for forgetting things, guess what? No accommodations for you. Oh, but that's real. Right. The problem with this stuff is nobody can experience life through any frame that is not their own. Everyone has to listen. And companies don't like listening because they think it's a waste of time. Now, good companies do listen. Good CEOs spend a lot of time listening. And it's amazing, doing the work I did for some of these larger companies. It's amazing how the top executive is super smart, super sharp, really cuts to the bone of everything. And then it's left to the tier under them who just scrambles around, gets nothing done, pushes paper around, and, just spends money with nothing to show for it because there's no reward for actually producing anything, what the companies punish is mistakes, which means sitting on your ass and doing nothing is the smartest way to keep your job. As opposed to, while we're on the subject of good ideas badly executed, Elon Musk pulling a "what did you do this week?" That's not a bad instinct, but the problem is that's what managers are for. That's what the local managers are supposed to be discussing with their team. The CEO, that's not their job. The managers report to their managers. The managers, they're consolidated. They move it up to the CEO. That's what managers, that's what middle and upper management are for. And when you get into these big companies, there are 7 to 19 layers of management. And it's freaking Hunger Games with people trying to move up the ladder. Now, obviously, there are going to be winners and losers. People are going to pick favorites. That culture inherently becomes, not egalitarian. And this is when we get into the meaning of merit. And the truth is that merit is subjective and situational. And it's not always gonna go your way. And, I said to someone in comments on Monday's video who said, "I'm tired of being told to change." And it's like, all right, well, whenever I said to because he admitted he comes across as negative. And I said, well, every time you're negative, every time you criticize me, that's essentially telling me to change. So if you're tired of being told to change, then I'm just going to ignore your criticism because you can dish it out, but you can't take it. And see, I will say that to someone, whereas other people would not be as assertive. And so I get labeled a bitch and improperly feminine and narcissistic and unhinged because I said, look, here's what's wrong with your argument. And I do that because INTJ, I just want people are functioning under things that are not true. I am providing information so that people can chuck out the bad shit. I even cited the damn study. But people can check out the bad shit and replace it with stuff that's actually data-driven. The problem is they don't want to. And no matter what group of people you approach, they will respond emotionally first, logically second. That is just humans. And if you're not willing to get screamed at by a bunch of people in this day and age, there can be no discussion. And that means there's no discussion because nobody in their right mind gets screamed at every day the way I do in YouTube comments, right? It's just, there's this perception that change has to be exhausting and tiring and feels bad instead of change feeling interesting and fun. And I mean, not necessarily always fun, but productive, right? You make a change, you see things getting better, that motivates you to make more changes. And the problem is so many people are sitting there going, you first, you give me something first. Nope, respect is earned. Well, you didn't earn that person's respect. The people, like, I'm sorry, who are you? In comment section, like, what? All right, why should I listen to you? Because you couldn't even accurately reflect back what I said. So, and this is the thing, people get upset. And they don't see the hypocrisy in having an emotional response, responding negatively, critically, and unproductively, And then they think it's unfair when someone goes, yeah, no, you're just convincing me that I was right the first time. You know, if you're concerned about an anti-male bias, being rude doesn't help that at all, you know? And, well, being, attacking your audience doesn't make you seem like less of a bitch. Yeah, you're right. I concede that point. I don't care if you think I'm a bitch. You've exhausted me. I didn't care to begin with, but I'm concerned about the fact that if all you have to do is label a woman a bitch and then you don't have to listen to her and treat her poorly, guess what? The bar for labeling a woman a bitch is going to drop. Right? Which is also why I oppose this idea that men are presumed to be dangerous. Because if all a woman has to do is, I'm afraid, then the threshold for saying I'm afraid drop. It becomes a control lever. So that's why I'm like, no, you're gonna have to show me some sort of evidence that there's an epidemic of bathroom assaults since trans people have been able to use the bathroom based on their assigned gender for me to believe this is a reasonable fear. All fear is not reasonable. And why? Well, because that's equity. Because if we're going to ask a group for one thing, you have to say, look, I agree with you on this. I can work with you on this. I need you to work with me on this. If you don't agree to do the work, no deal. That's fair. Expecting the other person to go first all the time is, you're not going to get included in anything. Because who are you to demand that, you know? And I really think, based on some conversations I've had that really rocked me this week, I really think that there's a lot of people who are adults, fully fledged adults, who don't know who they are. They need this constant external approval of others, notably women, to tell them who they are because they don't know. Or what they think about themselves is, actively bad. And so they watch YouTube videos seeking confirmation bias. And the minute somebody says one thing that doesn't actively soothe them, like, if you feel mocked right now, imagine what it's like to read comment after comment after comment that is full of emotion with no substance. And I'll tell you why it pisses me off, why it frustrates me so badly, because if there is an adjustment I can make, I will do it. I did it with, institutionalized or systemic sexism instead of terms like patriarchy. I'll do that. I'll make that change. No problem. That's logical to me. But I cannot make bricks without clay. And if you just sound like stereotypical Musk bro, then there's no starting point there. You can't just aggrieve and aggress your way into some sort of, I don't know. I don't even know what people are looking for other than this idea that people should stop picking on them when they're not picking on them in the first place. A person going, look, this is what the data shows, is not an affront on you. And going, you're wrong. I wrote back, you're wrong. And yeah, that solves something. Not at all. The problem at the core of this is it's men who are primarily aggrieved. Women are much more likely to support DEI measures. And the women who don't support DEI measures, I've talked to some and they say, well, if I'm a DEI hire, no one's going to take me seriously. And, I say to them as that older woman who's just fucking tired, yeah, well, if you're not a DEI hire, they're going to assume you slept with somebody to get in here anyway. So there's no way that you're going to be respected on day one. That's just not the way of the world for women. Trust me. I worked for free for 6 months to get my job in television, and people still accused me of sleeping my way into the job. And that, that was, it's not fair. It's really not fair. But the reality is that there will be good people at a workplace that welcome people and try to make sure everybody has a chance. You gotta still earn it, but it isn't fucking Hunger Games. It's more like, I don't know, an exercise class. You gotta work, you gotta sweat, but it isn't life or death. And then there are people who are just terrible, who backstab and spread gossip and look for reasons to dismiss people. And an emotionally safe workplace, or a psychologically safe workplace, the goal is to weed those people out. And I hate to break it to you, but if you're somebody who watches an entire video and only comments on what you can criticize, you're not going to do well in this new paradigm, because emotionally safe workplaces center people who go, you know what? Here's what you did not great, but here's what you did right. And here's how to improve the stuff that wasn't great. The problem I find on the internet with all this aggrievement is that when you say, look, here's a way to solve the problem. No, you're wrong. DEI, blah, 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 do this model. Blah, 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 blah. Like, the minute it's a, look, here's something to try. No, I won't change. Holding your breath like a toddler. And that's not an insult. That is literally what's happening. These brains are hitting this point where it's just emotional vomit. If you're constantly feeling unsafe, if you are constantly dysregulated, if you are unbalanced, which means you don't know where your emotional center is, you're probably lashing out at people and not realizing it. And how do I know this? Because at least once a week, I deal with someone lashing out at me, not because of what I said, but because of what I said reminded them of something someone else said that was kind of similar, and they didn't like that, so they lashed out at me. And they, I say, when they finally realize I lashed out, I was like, why did you do that? Well, I didn't realize I was lashing out at the time. I heard this week from somebody who said they didn't know something. And I'm like, well, yes, you did. You knew you had no experience with something and you knew no one else did. Yeah, you're right. But people don't stop and think before speaking, before they write this shit. And it means, like, what did you accomplish? Okay, you knocked off a piece of one of my spoons for the day, but otherwise you did not persuade me to listen to you. And if you believe respect is earned, that goes both ways. I show up with something other than my own opinion. I spend a lot of time reading psychological papers and best practice and interviewing people and actually looking at, the broad scope of the DEI landscape. And you will never find somebody more critical, like meaningfully critical, of how DEI is executed than a DEI expert. Every single one of them knows it's not working. And the truth is, the problem with DEI is that unless you have that precursor step, which is everybody feels like they have a shot, you're not going to get good faith efforts. You're going to get a lot of backstabbing and manipulation. And, when you've got people coming out of college with these huge insecurities and anxiety and a ton of projection and deflection, they don't know just how impossible they are to deal with. Your coworker is not your mommy or your daddy. You can't just have a tantrum on them and have them go, it's okay, it's okay. Quite frankly, parents shouldn't do that either. It's, look, I understand you're disappointed and frightened. This is not the way to handle it. Work with me here. And that's what it comes down to. The DEI joke, I apologize for the DEI joke, right? I knew some people were going to get offended. I didn't expect... Bleh! Right? Some people got it. Most people got it. That's the thing. And I'm like, why am I apologizing? Well, I'm trying to give the people who were upset something, because I already got the people who aren't. And then I realized, well, yeah, but that means I'm going to lose the people I already have, because, you shouldn't apologize for that. You did something wrong, and you know what? They're right. So there's no pleasing everybody. There never is. That's life. And so who am I going to take? The people that have shown an ability to regulate and self-soothe and deal with challenging material in a way that's productive? Or the people who are going, wah, wah, Duluth model, wah, DEI, wah, bad, wah, hates men. The answer's really simple there. There are ways of going, I don't know that tracks, without doing that. And on my Discord server, the moderators have conversations like that at least once a week where we don't agree on something, but we don't attack the person or be raw about it. It's like, I've got a slightly different take, or I have something to add, or I have some nuance or something. It's in the spirit of solving the problem, not in the spirit of, no, you're wrong. That's petty, and it's childish, and it's angry. And it's, yes, it is a shout of pain. It is. But no one can help you with that pain when you are causing pain with every word out of your mouth or keyboard. You're just a bad investment when you're doing that. And okay, yeah, there's a ton of grifters online who are happy to take your money, so you invest in them so they can tell you what you want to hear, but has it really helped you get ahead? It might help you feel like it's not your fault, but, if you are unwilling to change, you're done. Because life's about change. That's what I do. I try something that doesn't work, I fix it. Right? Something's not received the way I intended, I try again. As long as I feel like someone's willing to work with me. If you are not willing to match that, if you are not willing to work with me and actually bother to explain yourself instead of, I'm going to write a comment, yeah, fuck her, bitch, whore, slut, you know, and you can see it. You can feel the unsaid resentment of, I'm not allowed to call her these words anymore because of DEI. I never wanted to call people those things in the first place. I thought it was required because, trash talk's part of the culture. And I did it. And you know what? I didn't feel good about it. And I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll say funny stuff when I'm streaming on Twitch, but that's not me. I'm not someone who wants to name call. I'm not someone who wants to attack someone. I feel better. First shot's free. But you come at me, I'm not a pushover. So even if you're right and the world is horribly unfair, you know, I learned a long time ago, that's your hand you're dealt. And you can either decide to learn how to navigate that maze, which, means changing, or you can stew in your own juices and go, showed them I didn't change. So you stagnated. And that's not to say all change is easy. And that's not to say all change is right. But you do, if you're not happy with your circumstances, then something does have to change, and no one is going to hand it to you. No one is going to think you're a great guy who deserves their attention because you left a critical YouTube comment. They're at best going to go, well, maybe he can be reasoned with, but that's a kindness. No one is required to respond to your rudeness. And if you dish it out, you better be prepared to take it. And I have not yet met a person who actually can. If you get triggered by the words DEI, you shouldn't be criticizing anybody, because that is a term so amorphous. You can ask 12 people and get 14 definitions of what it is. You're responding based on fear. And no one is going to soothe that fear through you lashing out on the internet. You're just going to collect a bunch of people who agree with you on this topic. But I've seen these issue-driven communities, they rise and they fall, and it's infighting and distrust that tears them all apart. I still have people I'm friends with from Gamergate, and they were on the pro Gamergate side. I was a games journalist. If we can do that, it's possible. But all of that started with respectful, detail-oriented disagreement, not hurling invective and buzzwords. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching, and be well.